welcome back to the channel for my review of episode 19 of season 11, The Absolute Worst. Some time seems to have passed since the ninja left for the Neverrealm, and we have this scene of a paranoid warden warning the other prison guards not to let the prisoners know that the ninja have vanished. But as you know, the newspaper gets into the hands of Ultraviolet and the mechanic, and this scene also shows Captain Soto, Kilo, and a few skeletons who all make a cameo. So the mechanic and Ultraviolet plot to escape from prison, and so they do escape, and they go to the sewers and find a fellow criminal named Fugitive who is kind of odd, and they begin to talk about who their least favorite ninja are. For Ultraviolet, it is Zane, and she talks about how she fought Zane. And then for the mechanic, it is Nia, and he basically is robbing a bank when Nia comes and stops him. And for Fugitive, it's Jay, and Jay is basically flying around and zaps him into some rocks. So then they all escape prison, but then are caught by Samurai X, and so they quickly agree that Samurai X is really the worst of them. This is the first episode of Ninjago not to be animated in the normal 3D LEGO form, and moving forward, this does give me hope that DHX can animate these new styles and make it look good, because I do feel like they got this 2D Western anime-inspired animation style. I feel like they did this pretty well, and so we got an episode that did look pretty nice. My favorite designs from this episode would go to Ultraviolet, Zane, and Jay especially. I really liked Jay's design. I feel like he was probably the best out of the ninja. And I felt like Lloyd, Nia, the mechanic, and Fugitive all looked pretty nice in their anime form too. Fugitive is pretty simple. I mean, he's not as expressive or unique as the other designs, but I feel like this was definitely one of the episode's strong suit. The animation was done really nicely, and so we got something that was definitely very pleasing and entertaining to watch. I love the fast-paced feeling of this anime-inspired animation style, and I just felt like it definitely was fun to watch. That scene that showed some cameos for other prisoners like Soto and Kilo and some of the skeletons was cool too, and I feel like it did a good job in just showing us some of these old characters like the Warden again, although he did appear in this season already. And then you have Ultraviolet and the mechanic too. I feel like this was a nice idea to include the mechanic in there just to kind of introduce, or rather reintroduce, some of these older characters that we have seen in the TV show before. But then you also have Fugitive too, and sadly we're going to talk a bit more about him in the con section. And so I feel like some of the humor in this episode was good, some of it was not good, but I feel like just the humor overall was kind of wacky, and it did land sometimes, but it didn't land at other times. And when I say that, I do feel like the humor was best during the anime sequences when you had the villains trying to portray the ninja as villains, and I feel like in that sense it did succeed. I loved how Zane was really portrayed as a monster with all of his arms and stuff, and freezing Ultraviolet slowly and then pushing her off the jet. Yeah, that's pretty funny. And then you also have Nia stealing the mechanic's car, and also Jay basically blasting Fugitive into rocks and electrocuting him, and I feel like during these scenes the humor definitely was present. The Samurai X cameo was also cool, but unfortunately we got some other stuff to talk about in our next section. First of all, it's hilarious that this episode is titled The Absolute Worst, because that's what it is to some people actually. Not myself. I didn't feel like this episode was terrible, but I feel like a lot of stuff could have been improved. First of all, when they say that these new formats, or rather these new styles, would be story motivated, this episode did not feel story motivated at all. It felt like instead it was just being done to show off that anime style. I feel like this episode was basically just to show us the ninja in the anime form, and I get that they're excited about it and stuff, but this felt like the opposite of story motivated. Instead, it was taking away from the story of the Neverrealm just to show us this new format that they're proud of and stuff. And so, I mean, this has been a general problem with the season itself. Just anytime the plot is starting to deepen and develop and get pretty interesting, then they throw a filler episode at us, which has been a major problem so far. So I guess my big issue is that just the idea to put this episode in between episodes 18 and 20, which are two episodes that are vital to the plot, but this episode just being placed that way felt really forced. Now, let's talk about Fugitive. Fugitive is not one of the humor parts that went well this episode. He's not a terrible character, but he's just kind of odd, and I guess he appeals to that wacky kind of sense of humor, but a lot of the jokes with Fugitive just didn't really land at all for me, and so instead I feel like Fugitive was mainly an annoying character, basically just there for comic relief, and I don't feel like he was done as well as he could be. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have made him comic relief. I mean, he's literally a bird guy who lives in the sewers. I mean, what else are you gonna do with him? But rather, he should have been focused on more as a source of humor rather than an annoying tag along to Ultraviolet and the mechanic. As for Ultraviolet, it was nice to see her back. It does seem that she has a new voice actress, although I'm not entirely sure. Her voice is kind of annoying, which definitely was one of the unpleasant parts of this episode. No hate to the voice actors or anything, but I feel like Ultraviolet's voice was not one of the things that I enjoyed about this episode. The thing at the beginning of the episode with the warden basically freaking out about the prisoners finding out about the ninja's disappearance was just really, really weird and didn't feel in character for the warden at all. Okay, so plot definitely not one of the episode's stronger points. This episode spent way too much time on the prison escape subplot rather than expanding on the anime fights. I mean, those were fun to watch and I feel could have been longer, but instead the majority of the episode was about these three goons trying to escape from prison. Now, when we're talking about characters, nobody really stood out. None of the prisoners were exactly outstanding as characters. I mean, I guess you could say that the ninja being portrayed as villains was something that was cool to watch, but I don't feel like any of the main characters for this episode, that being the three prisoners, were awesome as characters. When we're talking about action, this episode nailed it with that. This episode was just really fun to watch. The anime sequences, awesome. I think they were done really well, and definitely proving that Ninjago can handle these new anime formats, or rather these new animation formats, and deliver really cool action scenes with that. No motion really for this episode, so we'll skip that considering this isn't a plot heavy episode. My final rating for this episode is going to be a 6.5 out of 10. I just feel like this episode could have been better in a lot of ways. It just felt crammed into the season 11 episode lineup, and just the prisoners as characters weren't really awesome. I feel like they could have been improved in certain ways, and the anime scenes should have been longer. I mean, they were really fun to watch. Luckily, we will have anime episodes done better later on in the season. Thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share with anyone ever you know. Let me know what you guys thought of episode 19, the absolute worst, and I will see you next time.